This paper aims to engage in a discussion and a reflection between different layers of fiction and reality, their connection and influence on each other, and the ways in which they manifest themselves. Specifically, how the history and myth surrounding the city of Berlin from the 80s to the present day relates to the life of the city and to literature, taking as an example the translations of excerpts from the German novels Wir Kinder vom Bahnhof Zoo by Christian F. from 1978, Zoo Station, The Story of Christian F. is the English title, and Der kleine Bruder by Sven Regner from 2008, whose title in English is The Little Brother. The paper briefly explores the history of the city from the decades of interest to the present day, to provide a basic context and starting point for subsequent reflections. An attempt is made to link history as much as myth and extracts from the novels to a real and actual dimension, that is to say, to specific places in the city. From then on, the paper discusses, while trying to consider both an internal perspective from the German point of view and an external perspective, how the German capital appears in the common imagination, how interconnected this is with the literary and artistic environment, what is at the origin of the myth, and what flows from it. The novels examined are not used to draw absolute conclusions, but rather to exemplify the phenomena discussed in the paper. Zoo Station, The Story of Christian F. is an autobiographical novel written by journalists Kai Hermann and Horst Rieck from a series of interviews with the then 16-year-old Christian F. and resulting from her testimony in a trial. In addition to being a tragic testimony to the world of drugs and the fate of many young people of her generation, the book has, thanks to its extraordinary success, effectively become part of the city's mythology. The Little Brother is a novel, if one may say so, with a broader outlook, painting what life was like for young people who decided to move to Berlin in the 80s, in the case of the protagonist, from Bremen. What essentially happens is that the city absorbs him into its chaos, into its groups of artists who occupied buildings left empty by the war, who survived as best they could between the more or less legal running of nightclubs and more or less improvised artistic careers. The discussion then continues on the changing myth of Berlin after the fall of the wall and in the 90s up to the present, analyzing how mass opinion preserves certain elements and forgets others, how it changes and how much it is connected or not connected to the reality of a place, what consequences it has on the lives of those who live there and those who only imagine it. In some ways, every place holds the collective memory of the lives that have passed through it. For most of them, this memory is in the exclusive possession of those who inhabit them and does not branch out from them. Inevitably, there are places in which memory is more concentrated than in others, places in which the overabundance of life generates reverberations that may come to have an all but immaterial influence within and beyond them. What is meant to be emphasized here is how something as ephemeral as the idea of a place has substance and weight in history in general and in people's lives in particular. The idea of freedom and tolerance, of chaos and opportunity, which is part of the Berlin myth, surely reflects as truthfully in reality as it does not. Many aspects of this legend have disappeared, some never existed, or existed only in part. However, to quote the Italian writer Vincenzo Latronico, who has lived in Berlin for many years, we would like to take the example of Tempelhof Park, the city's former airport, now an enormous park that, despite the current housing crisis in an increasingly populous city, survives as an empty space, or in the words of the writer, as 4 square kilometers of pure potential, a phrase that excellently expresses and sums up the heart of the Berlin myth, and its parts that are worth remembering and keeping alive.